The AI anime videos you see online look insanely cinematic, but if you've ever tried to create one yourself, you already know it's not that simple. The motion looks weird, the style is inconsistent, and the final result usually feels nowhere close to what you see online. And the biggest reason this happens isn't your prompt, it's the AI model you're using. That's why in this video, I'm going to test every major AI video generator and find out which one is actually the best for creating anime. I'll split everything into 3 different categories, and for each one, I'll use the exact same inputs across all the models, so we can immediately see which one performs the best. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which AI model you should use for your own anime videos and which ones you should completely avoid. But before we can test anything, we need to create the inputs. So let's go ahead to Higgsfield to make all of our reference images. Once we're inside, click on Cinema Studio 3.5 and open the image section. For the model, I'll set it to auto because it automatically chooses the best AI image generator for our anime. And now, because I'm first going to generate the character, I'll write this prompt. Then I'll set the resolution to 2K, keep the aspect ratio at 16:9 and press generate. And here's the character I'm going to be using across every reference image. The reason I generated him on his own first is so I can lock him in as a saved asset. That way, the same character shows up across all 3 starting frames and nothing about him drifts between scenes. So let's head back to the image section and build the first reference image. For this one, I'll bump the resolution up to 4K and keep the aspect ratio at 16:9. Then before I write the prompt, I'll add the character I just built as a reference. This image we're creating right now is going to be the frame for the visual quality test. So it needs to be an action-heavy scene with motion, wind, and a lot of detail because that's where most models start breaking. Here's the prompt I'll paste in, and now I'll press generate. Came out exactly how I pictured it. The character was introduced into the scene without losing any of his original details, and the lighting already has that warm anime look I was going for. Now, I'll do the same thing for the second reference image. This one is for the prompt adherence test, so the scene has to be calm enough that the model can actually follow a sequence of instructions without improvising. Swap the prompt with this one, then generate. And now the third image, which is going to be for the audio test. So for the prompt, I'll paste in this. Honestly, my favorite one turned out to be the third. The firelight on the character's face looks like a still from an anime. Now that all 3 reference images are ready, we can finally start the actual test. And the first one is the visual quality. Now the main things I'm going to be looking for in this test are the intense movements, the wind motion, and also how his clothes respond to all that. And by the way, if you want to test all these models yourself, I'll leave the link to Higgsfield in the description where you can sign up. So let's go through each model one by one and see how they handle it. The first one is Seedance 2.0. So I'm going back to Higgsfield in the video section, click on create video and choose Seedance 2.0 from here. Then I'll paste this prompt, and for the references, I'll add image 1 of the character and also the first image we generated with the temple. Then the duration goes to 15 seconds, which is the max, resolution to 1080p, and the ratio to 16:9. Now, the only thing left to do is to press generate and wait a couple of seconds. Here's the result we get back. I can honestly say this is looking really good. The robes whip in the wind exactly how you'd expect, and the gust release has real impact. On top of that, the camera push-in really adds to the moment. That's a solid 9 out of 10 for me. Next up is Kling. For this, I'm going to follow the same process as before. I'll select the model, paste in the same universal prompt alongside the image references, and then move on to the technical settings. But because they are exactly the same, I'll simply create the scene. Here's what we get. The stance to spin to gust arc reads cleanly and the composition holds up, but it feels a bit stiff next to Seedance and the wind just doesn't have the same explosive energy. For these reasons, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Now let's see what VO 3.1 can do in the same circumstances. But there's one problem here right from the start. We can't generate a 15-second video because VO is capped at 8 seconds. So this means it'll speed up the entire scene just to cover everything inside, which will most probably affect the quality. But the upside is that the resolution goes up to 4K, so I'll pick that and generate.
Feel the power of the wind.
Yeah, this is just as I expected. The sequence feels rushed because of the shorter duration, and the model adds motion that wasn't even asked for. The single frames look cinematic, but the action logic is a bit off. Unfortunately, that's a 4 out of 10 for me. Then we have WAN 2.7. Let's change the settings back to the normal ones. So this means we pick 15 seconds and 1080p for the resolution. Now let's see how WAN compares to what we've seen so far. Well, it gets the stance readable enough, but the release, the cloth and dust interaction feel off, and the impact just doesn't land the way it should in an anime action shot. However, it's better than Vio, so it gets a 5. Now, let's test the 5th model from the list, Hailuo. Unfortunately, this is also capped when it comes to the duration. Instead of 15 seconds, the maximum is 10. So we'll choose that and wait for the results. And here they are. There is barely any readable motion in this one. Compared to Vio, it performs worse, with no clear spin or gust arc at all. Even though the anime look shows up in single frames, the animation itself doesn't hold together. That's a 3 out of 10. So after round 1, Seedance is out in front with 8. Next up is the prompt adherence test, and this one is trickier because the prompt has 3 specific beats that need to happen in order. He raises water into a spinning sphere, then it splits into 3 streams orbiting him, and finally, it all freezes into ice petals. So the real question for each model isn't if it looks good, it's if it actually did follow the sequence. The first model is Seedance 2.0 again. It's the same process as before, but this time, I'll swap in the new prompt and change the scene reference to the lotus pond image. For the settings, I'll leave it like that and create the scene. Here's what we get. And I have to say, Seedance mostly keeps everything together. The water doesn't rise into a sphere, but it forms cleanly. The 3 streams actually orbit the character, and the ice petals drift down at the end exactly as described. So for the prompt adherence, it gets a 9. I'm now changing the model to Kling and hitting generate. This is the video. Now I want to slow down a bit and analyze carefully if it hits all 3 beats. So let's check them. The water rises into a sphere, yes, although it does look a little weird. It splits into orbiting streams, also yes, though they're a bit simpler than I imagined. And the ice petals at the end, yes, but the clap that's supposed to trigger them gets blurred into the motion. For these reasons, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Now let's see what Vio 3.1 does with this one. And after watching it struggle with structure in the first round, I already have a feeling where this is going, because this time, it's not just about animating an action. It's about following 3 steps in a specific order, all inside that same 8-second cap. Here is the result from Vio.
Transform and release.
The sphere never really forms cleanly, and by the end, the model seems to improvise its own version of the ice beat. It's not following the prompt, it's more like doing its own thing, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. Next we have WAN 2.7. Let's change the settings back to 15 seconds and 1080p and generate. Before I even check the sequence, my first impression is that visually, this isn't bad. The camera arc feels calm, and the Lotus Pond environment looks really well. But the moment I check it against the prompt, things start to fall apart. The water sphere forms, but the 3 orbiting streams never really appear, and the ice petals drift in without the clap ever triggering them. So the look is there, but the adherence isn't really. That's a 5 out of 10. And for Hailuo, let's go with the same 10-second cap as before, and skip straight to the result. This one doesn't land. The water rise and stream split technically happen, but they lack impact even with the anime style intact. The ice petals are the weakest part. They're soft, don't freeze as requested, and instead just fade in. The result feels unfinished. It is a 3 out of 10. So with round 2 done, Seedance is still sitting on top. Now let's see what happens when we push the models on audio. This one is probably the hardest for any AI video generator because they are more focused on creating qualitative visuals rather than audio. But because adding voiceovers in other software is quite complicated, we want to find the best AI model that can also handle audio itself. So let's try it using this new prompt for all the models. Now let's add the campfire image reference alongside with our character and click generate. Here's what we get from Seedance 2.0, which is currently on top of the list.
The world is bigger than your anger. Here, by ruined spirits in Immigal. Let it go, and you'll fly again.
and I'm actually really impressed by this. The firelight flickers naturally, the crickets and ember sounds are layered in, and the voice delivers the line with real emotion. The only thing that's slightly off is when it adds a random sentence between the lines. So for the audio, it gets an 8 out of 10. Now let's see if Kling can match that, because audio is very different territory from what we've tested so far. Take a look at the video.
The world is bigger than your anger. Let it go and you'll fly again.
Well, this is where Kling's consistency streak finally breaks. The voice sounds decent, but the lip sync feels off, and the ambient sound isn't quite there. That's a 6 out of 10. And speaking of unexpected results, VO is up next, and this one might actually be its moment. Because for the first time in this test, VO's 8-second cap isn't working against it. The dialogue beat is short enough to fit comfortably. On top of that, VO has a reputation for generating audio, sometimes even when you don't ask for it. So let's see what happens when we actually do want it. Here's the result.
The world is bigger than your anger. Let it go, and you'll fly again.
And this is VO's best showing so far. The ambient layering feels cinematic. The line is spoken mostly accurately, and the emotion actually lands. 7 out of 10, and that puts it ahead of Kling in this round. Next we have Wan 2.7. Let me check this one against the 3 important criteria.
The world is bigger than anger. Wait with your anger. Let it go, and you'll fly again.
For the ambient sound, it's decent. Spoken line, well, this is where it falls apart. The voice reads the line, but a couple words are clearly off. And for the lip sync, there are noticeable drifts from the very first syllable. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10. And for Hailuo, the problem is obvious the moment you press play. There's no sound at all in this result. So that's a 1 out of 10. So here's the final scoreboard after 15 generations. As you can see, Seedance is the clear winner with 26 points out of 30. But this doesn't mean it is the best option. There's one more thing to take into consideration when picking one AI model, and that's the real cost that goes into generating one video. Wan 2.7 is priced at 38 credits per clip, but I honestly think this is too high for the average results it delivers. It's better than nothing, but you have a few more alternatives you can choose from. For example, you can use Google VO 3.1 that costs you 88 credits for a video. Now this has the same score as Wan, but there's a real difference between them. VO can generate cinematic short clips at 4K resolution, while Wan can't. So if you want that for your AI projects, this is definitely a good choice. Next is Hailuo, which is at just 12 credits for a 10-second video. This is one of the cheapest models on the list, which makes it perfect for testing multiple ideas. And the same goes for Kling. You can get one video for 10 credits, and the results are truly impressive for something this cheap. So if you're producing at volume and need consistent quality per credit, Kling is the go-to. Now Seedance 2.0 costs 18 times more than that, but it gets you the best video quality possible. So what I usually do is to use a cheaper model to test my ideas, and then I go for a premium model like Seedance to make my final video look professional. That's why I can't really say one AI model is the best on its own. All of them have strengths and weaknesses. So the best approach is to combine them and to create your own AI workflow. And for this, you can use Higgsfield because you have access to all these models in the same platform. So if you want to recreate your own AI anime videos, go sign up to Higgsfield using the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.